An Irish Independent digital subscription doesn't just get you the news. It gets you the best of Ireland's stories all in one place. Whether it's the best of politics, business, sport, entertainment or lifestyle. Get it all for just €4 a month for 12 months when you first subscribe. Visit independent.ie/subscribe today. Irish Independent. Terms and conditions apply. Cancel anytime.
Hey everyone, conversation with Paul O'Connor to come very shortly. But first, this League of Ireland title race refuses to be dull. It refuses to be ignored. Last night was a bit mad.
Tulloch has lost it. Here goes Levy. Crossing opportunity. Everyone stretching. Media turning. Oh, they've hit the post again. Kazim puts it in. His first touch of the game. Incredible. The pendulum swings again. Pats by 3-2 in the 89th minute. Alamin Kazim, an unlikely hero perhaps, but how big a goal could that be for Pats in their chase for Europe and whisper it possibly a late title push. Shelbourne 2, St. Pat's 3.
And that is how it finished. Conan here again, hello.
Hello,
made it to day 2, congrats.
Yeah, it's just an ongoing day-by-day trial.
We'll get to Paul O'Connor in just a moment. Seán O'Connor, who covers the league amongst football generally for the paper, was skulking around outside, so we dragged you in afternoon.
Joe, good to see you.
There was a sense last night, this game was live on TV, Damien Duff Shelbourne 2, Stephen Kenny St. Pat's 3. This title race is relentlessly interesting. It's nuts. I don't think at the end of it we're going to say the winner is like a great team, but it's a great title race. And last night kind of felt like almost an inflection point of the last couple of years. The league has been in a good place. Attendance is up. Shamrock Rovers obviously doing very well, and they kick off their European campaign this week. There is the cottage industry that is just simply Damien Duff. Stephen Kenny's back in the league, but last night was just kind of this another moment, it felt like, for the league on national television as well. So a lot of things came together.
It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible game. A couple of friends of mine, a couple of people I saw on social media as well saying it's one of the best games they've ever seen. It literally had everything you would have wanted in a game. Big crowd, live on TV, 5 goals. Duff Kenny, of course, like that speaks for itself. Red card, late winner, the league leaders against the most informed team in the league. Pats getting their 5th successive league win, of course. It literally ticked all the boxes. It was an absolutely brilliant game. And
not to mention Aidan Keane may well have had a goal of the season, but for a crossbar.
You'd forget about that. You're packed with narratives.
It's like a stunning effort. If people haven't seen it, I'm sure they have at this stage, but he's comfortably inside his own half, centre circle territory, and cuts across the ball, but hits it so well that it's got too much juice on it. I mean, usually distance might be an issue with these kind of efforts, but he's too much on it, and it's starting to fade. The fade is coming, but just not enough, and thwack off the crossbar.
Off the underside of the crossbar. Like, I haven't seen this before. Normally it lands on top of the goals, normally it just goes over, but like off the underside of the crossbar from that far out.
Shells were under the cosh. Like, it was a really good Pats performance. You said, Sean, they're informed team in many respects in the league at the moment, and are deservedly 2-0 up, 1-0 up at half time, go 2-0 up, and you do kind of think that's that. And then Shells score with Tulloch on 75 minutes, a great goal, and then Matty Smith on 81 minutes, clever first touch, right foot, left footed finish, far corner curler, another amazing strike. And like at that moment there's the sense of destiny. Like Duff's going mad, Talcott Park's going mad, you'd think, oh my god, here it comes, and then boom, Pats.
And for a couple of minutes there, Shells were in the ascendancy. Obviously coming off the back of the second goal, it looked like for a few minutes they get the winner. Rayhan Tulloch had a massive chance to make it 3-2. How pivotal a moment that might turn out to be in a couple of weeks, we'll wait and see. And then not long after, coming off the bench, Kazim gets the winner, 2 minutes to go, and the 500 Pats fans behind that goal going absolutely nuts. Pats see it out then, their 5th league win in a row. Absolutely incredible ending to an incredible game that really had everything you would want. I know the cliche is like great game for the neutral, good advertisement for the league, but you'd be hard pushed to find a better game than that this season.
It is an extraordinary title race in that our league leaders have won one league game in 9, and they're still 4 points clear of Derry. Derry do have a game in hand now. Derry are in terribly average form as well. It's not like they're hunting Shelbourne down. But you just look at Shelbourne's results in the league alone. They did not win a game in September. They won one game in August. They did not win a game in July. They're top of the league. What has happened?
It's quite hard to put your finger on it. They have been hit with injuries. Sean Boyd is just not long back there. I think you can't look past the fact that they lost Gavin Molloy and Will Jarvis in the summer. Two of arguably their best players. Will Jarvis winning Player of the Month twice this season before he left. Just shows that the calibre of player he was and the void he left. They have signed a couple of players to help fill that void. Aidan O'Brien, of course, I mentioned there. He got a big goal in the Cup a couple of weeks ago. Kind of hard to put your finger on, but just looking at Shamrock Rovers and Derry, a lot of chances they've had to close that gap. They just haven't. I was at Shamrock Rovers there last Friday against Pats. Pats winning 3-0. Rovers' worst league defeat of the season.
And had been in good form coming into
it. Derry were up in Drogheda. Massive chance to close that gap even further, lose at Drogheda. Yeah. It just seems like every chance the team has had to make up the gap, they just haven't. And, I think someone mentioned it's just a slow bicycle race to the end. It's extraordinary stuff, and we're looking like the lowest points total in a long time, but it doesn't take away from the drama, the theatre. It's just captivating. We're in for a massive few weeks.
Yeah, here's some of Damien Duff after the game.
Damien, as dramatic a Dublin derby as we've seen here, how do you sum it up?
Hard to take. Obviously the big disappointment, we lost. Aligned with that, the goals we give away. You can't give them amount of chances to such attacking talent because they're stone cold killers, and they certainly are at the minute with the form they're in. Outside of that, amazing resolve. That's why they're a special group, getting back into the game with two wonderful goals. And again, the third one, soft you'd say, but the lead up to the goal, I wouldn't even call it poor, I would call it disgraceful decision. John Martin just right behind you there, they rugby tackle him to the ground, and the free kicks given against them. 6, 7, 8 seconds later they score here, which is still poor. It's not an excuse mentality, but here we'll have to dust ourselves down and recover mentally and physically and go again Sunday.
So that's Duff. He's not happy about the refereeing decision. The free against John Martin, as he would have seen it. Aaron Bulger was, I thought as well, okay, there's a degree of Martin with a hand on Bulger, but it's 95% Aaron Bulger. It did look to me like a nailed on free. Damien McGrath, the referee's having a bad week.
Was there? What about Damien and Stephen? Was there anything on the sideline? Did you pick up anything from their relationship? Because
there was I think flashpoint towards the end, but I don't think Stephen Kenny was involved. There seemed to be a few words going across. I think it was not long for Kazim came on. There was a few words going back and forth between both benches. I don't know what it was about.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the relationship between Duff and Kenny, I mean, it was talked about obviously in the earlier fixture this year, and I think I got the impression, not phenomenally warm, not necessarily cold, professional.
But they're both highly complimentary of each other after the game, like as Duff talking about Pats being stone cold killers, Kenny obviously very complimentary of the remarkable, when you look at Duff's coming up to 3 years so far, the absolutely remarkable job he's done, taking them from, they were newly promoted in his first season, first FAI Cup final in a long time, European qualification last year, and now leading the table for the majority of the season, and now just 3 or 4 games away from their first title since 2006.
It's extraordinary. Like, if they can, slow bike race, egg and spoon race, whatever way you want to kind of characterise
analogies.
If they can just stay standing and hang in there, I mean, like, it's already, you can't but ignore the fact they played Derry on the last day. This thing's destined to be nuts. He did say, by the way, on Damien McGrath, the referee, in another interview I was reading, he said, outside of that, which is what he said to Shelbourne TV there, I won't comment anymore. I know other managers in the league are allowed to comment and say what they want about referees. I won't, because I'll get a ban. To which Stephen Bradley at home said, sorry? Me? They play on Sunday. Just, again, add further intrigue, like the momentum of this title race, the intrigue around it continues. So they play Rovers on Sunday.
That's coming up to be an absolute cracker. Just looking at the table, Shelbourne 54 points. Shamrock Rovers could cut the gap to 2 points with 3 games to play, with a home win on Sunday. And obviously their Conference League campaign begins on Thursday, so how much will that affect? Massive money on the line, as we all know. Like, they're playing Apoel Nicosia, champions Cyprus. How much of that will be an advantage playing into Rovers' hands, Shell's hands, I should say, on Sunday? it's been said the last couple of seasons Rovers have not so much walked it, but the last couple of weeks of the season haven't been as exciting. There has been that drama, that crunch run-in we've been hoping for the last few years. This year we have it, and Sunday's just another. You could kind of sound like every week there's a blockbuster game, box office game, but Sunday, massive game.
And last word on Stephen Kenny. I suspect a lot of people are happy for him. He had an awful time, obviously, as Ireland manager. Really miserable ending. Has gone to St. Pat's, and whatever around the time of that European run, something has kind of kick-started something, or he's got his feet under the table, and they are now 5 wins in a row, 6 wins in 7. And it's all the usual kind of things around Kenny that people would have said when he was at Dundalk, that there's a kind of confidence about the players. And I saw Alan Cawley on TV make the point that, like, somebody like Jake Mulroney, that kind of horse whisperer magic that you felt Kenny had at Dundalk is maybe starting to come to the boil here. So what's your sense of Kenny? I know you were in Istanbul, for instance, for some of the European campaign. What do you think is happening at Pat's?
It definitely took a couple of weeks for him to, as you'd expect, put a stamp on things. That they had a crazy schedule. I think that May-June period when he came in, he had lots of games in a short amount of time, not much time in the training pitch, but just that European run, the furthest I think they got in their history. They were 90 minutes away from making a group stage of a European competition for the first time in their history. I was out in Istanbul. The first leg in Tala was 0-0. They lost second leg 2-0, but I was there. There really wasn't much in it. They missed a few chances in the first half, but since then they've just gone on an extraordinary run of form. You hear about this league this year, everyone's beaten everyone, and it is true. You don't see teams regularly putting together a consistent run of results. Pats have 5 wins on 5 now. Just 3 months ago, Pats were down to 8th for a little while, and now they're Monday night. Kenny's been asked about possible title challenge. Yeah, it's absolutely remarkable turnaround.
He batted off. He did.
He did.
But Europe is on.
They're right in the race for Europe. So that European run is on for Pats, and there'll be a lot of teams vying for that 4th spot.
Pretty good. We will be talking about it later in the week, I'm sure, but we just wanted to touch on it top of the show today. Colm Keys and Conor McKeown are in studio tomorrow. Jarlath Burns was in Australia last week. There are whispers of a revival of the international rules, that it may be on the cards, and we're about to see the new rules on our TV screens this month. Jim Gavin and team unveiling them to the public. So that is tomorrow's agenda. In the meantime, here's Paul O'Connor.
Guys, listen, we talk about making them pay. The job is only half done. We show them straight away where we are. Emotionally, passion-wise intensity from the first minute. Filthy drives around the pitch now. I can play for you all day. Swear out of it. So drives around the pitch, okay?
Paul O'Connor, look at this outstanding international player.
Saw the numbers in red, which means it was over 80 minutes. And we just went bananas. It was brilliant.
I'm so proud. So proud. I feel like an amateur rugby player almost today.
You need no introduction, but a warm welcome all the same. It's good to have you on.
Cheers, thank you.
Our first ever guest.
Oh, I'm honoured.
Wouldn't go overboard, but it's great to have you. We were due, I should tell listeners, to meet at 8 o'clock. Only Paul O'Connell would phone to say, listen, I'm only getting to the car park at 8:01.
Well, I was just looking at Google Maps. That's what that was saying. But I was thinking I mightn't get parking, and then I might get stuck in the foyer. It might be 5 or 10 past. That's all I was saying.
It's good that you've mellowed. No, very considerate. No surprises. We're talking here on the eve of a camp and Emerging Ireland, and when you're in camp, it's intense. Are you generally on the DOS otherwise? Like, is it Lahinch 4 times a week, or what's the general deal?
No, it's watching rugby is generally the job, so Monday, Tuesday is, and maybe even into Wednesday is kind of watching the provinces from the weekend. And then you're probably, once a quarter you're visiting the provinces, and you're trying to then maybe catch up with other coaches from either rugby or another walk of life. And then generally I try and watch another few matches during the week of maybe one match or half a match or a match and a half of, a good top 14 game and then on up to, you can watch all the lineouts really quickly from around the world. So the good teams that you like watching, you can watch their lineouts. Or so the Opta database is incredible in terms of how you can get to what you really want to watch quickly. You know, so that's generally the working week. It's you know, and then every second week we're up in Dublin for meetings as coaches. We're in together. But yeah, that's a lot of people ask me that. They wonder, you know, is the job part-time? But that's not to say if you wanted to take a little bit of time to play some golf or do something, you can do that as well. Because when you're in camp, you're 7 days a week for 5 weeks in a row or whatever it is.
You work up your days in lieu.
Days in lieu, exactly, yeah.
Can I start off the beaten track? I just noticed something when I was reading about you this week that I'd never thought of as important or noticed. Paul Jeremiah O'Connor.
Yeah.
Big in the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah, that's my granddad's name on my dad's side. Well, yeah, he used Jeremiah, but people called him Sonny, but I'm named, that's my second name now after him. So, yeah.
I was checking him out. So, Jeremiah is known as the weeping prophet because his heart was so tender.
Ah, there we go.
Which begged the question, when is the last time you cried?
I would be quite emotional, definitely around rugby. I don't know. I don't know. When was the last time I cried? I don't know. It would have been rugby related anyway.
Right.
Perhaps for a big game or something. I don't know. I don't know when it was. I should know, but I don't know. It would be rugby related, though.
As a coach, even?
Yeah, a little bit. I think sometimes even when I've done interviews or stuff, when if I was talking about Bernardo's or something with someone, I can get a bit emotional. If I'm doing an interview, if I was talking to you on the street, chatting about it, I chat all day. But you know the way sometimes you can speak in front of a group of people, you get a bit emotional. I find that happens to me sometimes. And, I grew up in a thing where, my first captain would have been Mick Galway with Munster, and Axel would have been my captain after that. And, they were like, I always talk to Jerry Flannery about it. I'd love to be back in the days when we used to be in the Clarion before a Munster match in January or whatever. And it was the last pool, when it was, the pool stages were really good at the European Cup. It was 6 games and playing an English team in January, with it all on the line and, waiting in the hotel for Axel to come down and say a few words. And it would only be a few words, cause he was a man of few words, but he's, he'd get emotional, his bottom lip would quiver and, you'd understand how important it was and how important it was to him. And that made it that important to us because it was important to him. So I'm kind of from that school of maybe guys that sometimes they like to show how important it is by getting a little bit emotional. And, I would say I do it less and less now. But, they were lovely times and those were the captains. Woody would have been the same. Mick Galway, Axel, bottom lip quivering before you get on the bus to go to play a big game. Knowing you had a big game and probably a big night out afterwards if you won. It was the best of times, really.
I can see it in your face. You'd go back and live that day again if you could.
Yeah. They were great days,
It's book season at the moment, so Johnny Sexton's is on the way, and I was obviously in advance of talking to you. I was thinking, what do I remember about Paul O'Connell's book? I didn't want to go back and look. I was like, what anecdote can I remember? Because you read a lot of them and certain things blend obviously into other books. The thing I remembered, or the anecdote I remembered, is a really lovely one. Now, I may have it 80% right, but the gist is you're a young fella of a certain age, I don't know, a 10, 11 kind of territory, and I know you're big into your swimming and your pitch and put, but you could be off going doing I think it's like a fishing competition. You're doing something that you wouldn't ordinarily do. And it's your first time doing it. Let's say it's a fishing thing. and you win the competition and you phone home to tell your mum, Sheila, like, geez, I won, but your dad's in the kitchen as well. And she sort of says, he's after winning. And you hear him say the most lovely thing a parent could say. He says, I knew he'd win. I told you he'd win.
Yeah.
And I always thought, God, whether he was trying to be a brilliant parent or not, he sort of knew how to do it.
Yeah. Well, he answered the phone. My dad answered the phone. Okay. And he said, and I told him I won the competition. So, like, you know, a fish jumped onto my hook.
It was fishing.
It was fishing, right. Yeah. So I won a fishing competition, like total potluck, putting a worm on a thing. But my dad did say that. When he answered it, he turned to my mother and said, I told you you'd win that fishing competition. And like, you know, you might sound like, he might sound like a dad that put loads of pressure on me. He absolutely wasn't, you know, not in the slightest did he ever put any pressure on me. But he definitely, there was definitely a lot of belief in the house, you know, and I played loads of different sports. You know, I used to take up sport and give up a sport. You know, I played hurling, football. I was obviously a swimmer. I played golf. I used to, and eventually ended up back playing rugby. I played rugby under 10s and under 12s, and I'd given it up and I'd gone back then. So, like, you know, there wasn't a lot to believe in at times, you know. So, but he definitely, and all throughout my career then, it was the same. Do you know, it was nice that he never actually coached me. You know, there was other people could kind of, and I'm seeing it now with my own kids, you know, other people could, I suppose, give you maybe some harsh feedback or some tough talks from time to time. He never had to do that because he was never my coach. Yeah. But he was just always, and my mother the same, always supportive, massive belief. Like, you know, there was days there when I would have played really badly as a professional rugby player. I would have played really badly, and, you know, we were struggling with Munster and losing, but he always believed in me. You know, he'd say something like, you can't do it all by yourself, or something, you know, just something like that. It was just nice to have someone that was, you know, blindly 100% supportive. Because when you're on the high, you know, even when you get to 16, 17, 18 and you get into academies and you're on the high performance journey, and maybe your parents are really enjoying it, and, you know, they wanted to continue and they wanted to get better. Yeah. Do you know, I would say it's tempting sometimes when you're, you know, because there was still a bit of a drinking culture. I probably drank a bit, and, you know, but even though I trained really hard, I'd say it's tempting once or twice to be a bit critical or to, but geez, they never ever did it. Always supportive. Wow. It was incredible. I don't know how they managed to stick to that throughout my career.
That's so lovely. Yeah. I get the sense the parents of your generation had a great time. The odd time when even Shane Horgan and Ron Lagar were in studio together in Virgin, and they'd be chatting, but there was a real familiarity in the way he'd be saying that. And how's Joan? And like, God, didn't our parents have a ball? I think like the drinking culture might have been the parents. I think they seemed to have a hell of a time.
I think it was new. And like, you know, I was only thinking of this the other day about Irish rugby. You know, I'm part of that group that grew up, you know, I grew up in a rugby household, big rugby household. Even though I was playing other sports, rugby was the main sport. Rugby was the sport that Dad wanted us playing, really, right. Like, you know. And so I grew up in the 90s. Like, 90s rugby in Ireland was hard going. The AIL was amazing if you're from Limerick. It was like these superstars. But the Irish rugby team was just so hard going. Whereas I think in the 80s, we won a little bit and we had some great players. Same in the 70s, and, you know, Mike Gibson and, you know, Willie John McBride and all these guys. But the 90s was real hard going. So I think, you know, 2000s, the European Cup was just this new thing that was just exploding. So everything was a bonus, I think, for the parents.
And it was so glamorous.
Yeah, it was so glamorous. You know, Sky did such a great job on it, in fairness to them. And, you know, you had that Thursday night special on Sky and all the venues, and, you know, and we were winning. And same with the Irish team, we were beginning to do good things as well. Things were turning. So I think maybe there was less pressure for the parents because, you know, we were winning a little bit, but there wasn't the pressure from previous Irish teams there or previous Munster teams or anything like that.
I think it was a sweet spot.
Yeah.
So your dad, and sorry, I'm leaving it. Your poor mother is just as amazing, I'm sure. But your dad, this great parent. As for Paul O'Connell, the parent, 3 kids between 7 and 14 now. If we sat them down and your better half and said, what kind of dad is Paul? What do you suspect the answer would be?
Probably strict at times, a bit too strict at times, I would say.
You're the disciplinarian.
I'd say we're both the same, but
right.
I probably could be more laid back than I am, you know. But I'm around a lot. The job takes me away a good bit. So when you're away, you're away. So, you know, when you're on tour, you're gone. When you're Six Nations, I get home some Wednesday evenings and they'll get up to some of the games. But most of the time you're gone. World Cup you're gone for a long period. When you're gone, you're gone. But when you're home, you're home. Like you can bring them to school in the morning. You're not well, my day anyway doesn't start at 7 o'clock. I drop them to school and then I go home and I crack into it. And, you know, a few evenings I'll collect them from school and I'm able to go to the matches in the evening and I'm there for dinner and, you know, I'm not out entertaining clients or anything like that.
Well, that sounds...
And the games at the weekends, if I'm going to a game, I can bring them to a game and things like that. So,
and is that terribly enjoyable? Is that kind of everything you hoped it would be?
Yeah, I enjoy going to matches. I enjoy the drive. Like, I enjoy the drive to school and I enjoy that stuff. I enjoy the drive to Lahinch, or I enjoy cooking dinner or eating dinner together. I mean, like, you know, we didn't go on a massive amount of holidays when we were young in my childhood, but I do remember it's been a great childhood for the normal stuff. Like, you know, the normal stuff was go crack.
Yeah.
And I hope my kids would say the normal stuff is go crack as well.
And I know, so you're a deep thinker about these things. Are you like very consciously reading all the academic papers on the best approach to parenting and all these books? Or are you instinctive? I'm just doing it.
I'm definitely trying to, myself and my wife, myself and my wife have listened to one book, an audio book that we listened to at the same time together, because our last fella, like a lot of parents, our last fella is a tricky customer at times. But I'd be trying to be laid back and trying to be aware and trying to let things pass and not trying to, I suppose, solve everything for them. And, you know, they're good kids. Like they're not. They don't need a whole lot of. They don't need a whole lot of discipline. They just need me to be nice and calm, I think, with them and show them the right way now and again.
Okay, well then a perfect time to play one of the 2 clips I was going to. So this is us, actually, and on Off the Ball a couple of years ago. Alan Quinlan's there as well, causing problems, and you'll hear Brian O'Driscoll as well. So have a listen.
I mean, you keep playing down the competitiveness.
I don't play
but you're clearly a weirdo.
It's very much under control now. I would admit that it did go too far. I mean, we don't play. I remember we were playing Monopoly with my missus one time, and a few of the people that were living, we had people, when I was young, when I bought my house first, we had people living in the house. I used to love Monopoly. We used to play Monopoly, but I remember one day we nearly broke up. She started selling her properties off cheaply to other people to try and beat me in Monopoly.
You should clarify it's your wife now, Emily, in case she's listening, not your missus.
But, and we had a massive row. She was in tears. And,
for God's sake. What's wrong with you?
It was cynical, yeah.
So you've mellowed?
Yeah, I suppose I have. I was very, very... That was my biggest strength, you know, as a rugby player. But growing up, it was my biggest strength, was my competitiveness, you know. Other people are... you know, have lovely hands or lovely offloaders or they see the space well and they're able to get it to the space, or they're good put. You know, I was a competitor. That was my strength.
Yes.
Like, you know.
Because I was going to ask you on that point, there's a line you had or have, which actually has landed with a lot of players, and you hear players routinely quote it now. I don't know if you came up with it, but certainly you popularized it, where you said, as a player, the aspiration was to be world class at things which require no talent. And that's kind of survived, I think, a bit beyond you initially saying it. So I'm curious, in coaching, what part takes no talent? And maybe I'm more interested, what is the talent in coaching? I understand what talent is on a pitch as a player. What's the talent in coaching?
I don't know what the talent in coaching is, but I think you can work hard at figuring out what you stand for, and you can work hard at putting language around what you stand for, and you can work hard then at, I suppose, giving the players constant opportunities to build habits around what you want the team to stand for, or them as players to stand for. So poor coaching that I would have experienced was vague, and good coaching was pretty clear. It was clear, and there was an understanding that this is actually going to be hard to learn. So we're going to keep doing it and keep giving you chances to get it wrong and then get it right again. We're not going to move on to something else all the time. Okay. So I don't know, is there any talent to coaching? But that's what I felt when I felt good coaching. That's what it felt like to me. And then what was the first question you asked me? You said, you said about the quote there.
Yeah.
In zero talent. But yeah, look, I don't know, is it the same in all sports? But in rugby, there's an awful lot of work rate moments. Yeah. If you want to make a good tackle, and some guys were just amazing tacklers, they can get their foot in close, and their shoulder contact, and they can leg drive, and they can do all this stuff. But I suppose getting into the position to be able to do that, and be able to even to see that play unfold, to put you into the position, actually takes no talent. You've got to get off the ground quickly. You've got to look at what's going on in the game between your guys and their guys, and where the ball is and when it might appear. You've got to scan those things. There's a load of things that take zero talent that can go into these big moments that look like they're, high talent moments. So I think that was the point. I don't know where the quote came from. I don't know where we're using it in Munster, we're using it in Ireland a bit. It's something that I would say that, Jerry Flannery and Donegal Callaghan and Peter Stringer and those type of David Wallace, those type of characters would believe in and buy into as well. And we may have been using it amongst each other,
Yeah. And you get the credit.
I get the credit, yeah.
Yeah. I presume as well, I mean, certainly one of the talents in coaching is that ability to not just have the knowledge and not just sit at the laptop, to impart it. I mean, you're talking there about trying to get it across to them. That's a real art. Like, you'd be so curious afterwards to go, did you understand what I was saying to a player?
Yeah, I don't think it's an art. Like, you can go to college and you can
study it, break it down.
You can study coaching, but you can study teaching.
And there's
a lot of people have a teaching degree.
And where do you feel you rank? Like, obviously a lot of former teachers populate rugby coaching fraternities.
Yeah, I suppose Joe Schmidt's way would have struck a chord with me, because I was the player struggling to learn things, and all of a sudden I found I was actually learning them a little bit quicker now, because I think he was probably using proper teaching methods that he'd learned in college and that he'd used as a teacher in school. So
you were struggling to learn things.
Well, not to learn things, to do them under pressure. It's all well and good, we when you want to tackle, or you want to have your foot in close when you tackle, so you can do that in a load of different drills. But trying to do it then when you have to, when there's a big game on, we all, under pressure, we probably revert back to our bad habits. So you've got to try and make your bad habits your good habits, so that under pressure, that's what you can deliver. So, I think he put a great emphasis on training and training almost like you play. Even though a lot of people say that and a lot of coaches say it, he was able to really deliver it, Like, you know, he used to stand at passing drills we did and used to absolutely shout at us and bark at us. And some guys didn't like it, but I think they didn't realise that he was just trying to create the pressure you might feel in a match. He didn't, you know, he'd be laughing and joking 5 minutes later.
Yeah,
it wasn't because, you know, like, even I hear some people saying it now that they found it intimidating. He was creating the pressure scenario that maybe previously we had trained without that pressure and then struggled to play under that pressure. Whereas he created that in training, which allowed you to deliver it in games.
Maybe there's a balance. You were there, I wasn't, but based on what the criticism would say, it's that it was too much intensity, that maybe it just was too prolonged.
Yeah, I think definitely some people struggle with it, but I don't know that everyone fully understands some of it. Like, you know, I used to find it really enjoyable.
Okay.
And I wasn't good at a lot of the stuff that he wanted. Like, you know, there was guys that certain plays used to revolve around because they were good at the real hard skill. You know, I wouldn't be given that job. I'd be running dummy lines or I'd be holding people down at the bottom of a ruck. But
you still liked it?
Yeah, it was proper coaching, you know.
Interesting. Let's talk Ireland then. 2021, you start with Ireland. Who calls you? Do you take any convincing? Do you jump at it? Is it basically after a quick phone call you're in, or what was your approach?
I had always gotten on well with Andy, and I'd spoken to him a few times, and I'd nearly taken a defence job somewhere, and I'd spoken to him about that, and I nearly did it, and he just rang me one day out of the blue and said, would I be interested in doing it? And in my head, I probably was thinking straight away that I was going to do it, but I told him that I needed a small bit of time and to think about it and chat to people about it. But
your agent would nod approvingly at that line.
No, well, but probably in my head, I was saying I'm definitely doing this. Really, like, you know, because he was a brilliant coach. You know, like one of those guys. I didn't work for him for long. We were on the lines, and the lines coaching is a little bit different. It's hard to get everyone aligned on something. You know, you probably are instilling the principles of what you believe in, but you don't have the time for all the subtleties, and the sub-principles are probably what really makes it work. But so I worked with him in a small period on the Lions, and I got on great with him and really enjoyed how he went about his business. So it was a brilliant opportunity to work with a team that I love, to work in international rugby, which I think if you have a family, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, I think it's a bit easier. You know, like it's certainly in Ireland, you can get in your car on a Wednesday afternoon, you can go home, you can be back in camp Thursday morning or whatever, so you can get home a little bit. Whereas, you know, it might be different in South Africa or New Zealand or whatever. But so it was a chance to work with some brilliant coaches. I was still very inexperienced, but Simon was going from the line out and the defence to defence on its own. So he was going to be able to keep an eye on what I was doing and check what I was doing. So I knew I was going to be able to get over the first few months where I felt a little bit out of my depth, or I'd have him to help me along.
Jeez, I didn't think you would feel out of your depth. I know the inexperience, but that's surprising to me.
Just the game moves quickly, like, you know, and if you're out of it for a little bit, or if you're coaching somewhere else for a little bit, or whatever, you know, I'd done stuff at the Munster Academy, then I'd done stuff with the Irish 20s, then I'd been in Staff Francais, but I'd been out for a little bit. Okay. And, you know, the game moves quickly, and Irish rugby moves quickly as well, I think, you know, so it was great. It was just a great opportunity to work with some really good people, and then to have another guy like Simon, as I was saying, a guy that had just done the job, was moving to a different job, but he'd still be there to check anything if I needed it. It couldn't have been a better opportunity for me.
It felt like you made an immediate impact. It jumped out to a lot of people that Ireland had become a touch sloppy at the breakdown, something which they were brilliant at under Schmidt, and then you arrived in. That seemed to improve. And everybody knew you were a real disciple of Joe Schmidt without wanting to go overboard on the wording of it. And it was interesting, even just last year, Johnny Sexton was asked about the difference you made. And he said, Paulie coming in was the final piece of the jigsaw. he married Joe's strengths with Andy's. He saw that we had lost some of the things Joe had given us, like detail at the ruck, discipline, habits and training. So ruck, habits and training, discipline, he felt you came in and just took some of that nice Joe Schmidt stuff and put it back on that team. I'd be very curious for your perspectives. That chime?
Yeah, a little bit. The ruck stuff, do you know, Ireland were playing a certain way where there was a lot of possession. You know, so Ireland have more rucks than most other teams when they play a game. They have more rucks than most teams in the Six Nations. So the ruck was pretty important. And, you know, sometimes you need to try something else to realise maybe what you were doing the last time wasn't too bad. Because every system, no matter what system you use for anything, you'll always look at what the other guy is doing and you'd say, I'd love if we had that. But then he's actually looking at your one saying, I'd love if we had that. Because nothing kills all the birds. Like, you know, there's always going to be a few what ifs. And I think they were still using a little bit of it, but drifted away from it as well. And we probably went back to a little bit more similar to what he was doing with a few little tweaks. And we've evolved that over time. But the core of what he was doing was there. And it was just very clear. That was the thing about it, as I was saying earlier. You know, the ruck is mayhem. It's very hard to put logic on it. You know, every picture, every scenario is different. You just don't know what's going to happen. Like, you might be a half a metre away from hitting a ruck, and in the half metre from you arriving there, the whole thing could have shifted. You know, someone falls or someone twists or whatever. And so it, you know, I think that the system that Ireland had under Joe was a pretty good catch-all system that worked for most of the scenarios. And we were able to plug that back in because a lot of the players knew it and understood it and were able to almost coach it and drive it themselves as well. So that helped, I think. It helped because, you know, at the time, and maybe a bit less so now, but at the time we had an awful lot of possession, a lot of rucks. So you needed to be good in that part of the game. Yeah.
You'd have a reputation for being big on detail. Someone like my cat, a bit less prescriptive. Like, are there nice creative tensions? I kind of half heard a whisper at that at the start.
Yeah. It was great. It was great because, you know, I think it's great to learn different ways of doing it and try and marry the two or the three or the four of them together. I think we've great balance in the coaching group because my way of doing it only would probably drive people mad. I would say, you know, my cat's way of doing it only would probably drive people mad. Andy's way of doing it only would probably drive. But, you know, if you have a group of people that get on well together and want to figure it out together and trash things out over conversations so that you can present something pretty united to the players, you're in a good place.
You guys are allowed to row behind the scenes, but then when it's presented to the players, united front.
We didn't really row, but we'd always discuss things and we'd always, you know, try and be as clear as we could. We probably weren't always as clear as we could have been, but you're trying to be clear to the players because, you know, it isn't... You know, you can't do a lot of exploration in international rugby. We get 12. We come together and we've 12 days before we have to be a team, and they've been all in their provinces. So you have to be pretty clear in how you're going to do things, and so you know. So at the same time, then you want to stick with what you believe in, but you have to understand that the guy over there has another way of looking at it as well. But he's a great guy, and you have to. You know, you have to figure it out, and we were good at doing that. Andy was good at refereeing that. I'd say.
I'll bet he was. Yeah, this is a perception point. You may have stats up your back pocket here which prove this wrong, but I'll give you the perception point anyway. On the line out, is that I would say, so 21 to 24 included. The biggest dip in the line out came at the time you would have least wanted it at the World Cup. I think it was 82%, which is kind of outside the top 10 at the World Cup. Which I'd say was beyond frustrating, infuriating, and all the rest. That was really interesting in that if almost anyone else was in there, it would have been like big criticism for the person looking after the line out. There was almost a degree with you of, well, geez, if he can't sort it out, like, what hope do we have? So let him at it. Why did it strike at the worst possible time? And am I right in saying that was the dip?
Yeah, well, like, I think, I'd say the three best defensive lineouts in the world would be ourselves, South Africa and New Zealand. You saw in the South Africa-New Zealand World Cup final, either of them could barely win a lineout off each other. South Africa gambled on a few things against us and caught us in that South Africa game. And it was brilliant, actually, what the players did. Like, we lost the first 4 in a row. I mean, as a lineout caller, I had a few days like that. It is really tough. But in fairness to the lineout callers and to Ronan Keller, they got things back on track. And we finished the game strongly. I think we won. I think they might have stolen one other lineout after that, and we might have thrown one crooked. But it was excellent how they got, and we won the game. And then against New Zealand, I think we lost 3 in that game, and one of them, off the last line out, we high tackled. Off that high tackle, they kicked to the corner and they scored a try. So, you can say the line out cost us a try. We scored a maul try in that game. We scored another try off a maul in that game. So, sometimes it's hard to grade where your line out is good or bad. Like, you could lose 3 line outs in a game, but you could score 2 maul tries in a game. Okay. And you could say, well, you operated at 70%, but they actually scored 2 tries and they didn't concede a try off a maul. So it's hard to exactly grade, but in that game, that New Zealand game, we weren't helped in getting off to a poor start by our lineup with some good field position. We got the ball back, but we probably didn't get to run the plays that we wanted to run off the lineout. Okay. And generally, Catty, the plays he had, we generally got something out of them when we won good ball.
And so is that in the coaching boxes, the 2 boys turn to their left and say...
No, never. You'd nearly rather they did.
Because I thought...
They'd never do that.
I think this is 2 and 2 equaling 5, but on TV, it looked at halftime like Andy Farrell sort of said something to you a little gruffly, and people thought he's barking at him there over the line out.
Someone said that to me. No, definitely not. I'd say he would have been. No, I can't remember what that was, but it wouldn't have been.
Sort yourself out there.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been that.
Okay.
He might have been thinking that, but he'd never say it.
Okay. I have never heard players so effusive about a coach as Andy Farrell. Like it's like a cult, actually, the way they go on about him. So what has struck you about him as a coach? What has he done here that has seemed to just have the secret sauce?
He's very conscious of the pressure part of things that would have come out of maybe some of the reviews from the World Cup, and worked hard at, having very high standards and trying to get the guys to play and perform at a very high standard and not let them have anything but the highest of standards, but at the same time not to let that pursuit of high standards affect their enjoyment of the game or affect their ability to perform under pressure on the big occasion, I think, so it's a hard one to do probably, to have high standards of people, but also, want them going into a game relaxed and ready to enjoy it and not afraid of making mistakes. So I think he does that really well.
The word I keep hearing is vulnerability. This is what everyone's saying about a Farrell camp. It's very different maybe to that more macho environment of 20 years ago. It does seem, maybe that's a wrong perception.
Yeah, I think it's the big buzzword now, vulnerability, isn't it? But, I suppose as a coach, you want to know if people are struggling or don't understand something or are feeling nervous to the point where it might affect their ability to perform. And maybe, I think, I think in every camp back in the day it was a bit macho and you had to pretend that you weren't nervous or you pretend that you knew everything or pretend that you were ready to go out and do what was required. Whereas I suppose trying to take pressure off players by understanding that side of it has become a big part of what Andy does and Gary Keegan does as well.
I was struck by Calvin Nash, who played Six Nations first time this year, and after French match, I think he came out and it's like lots of his post-match interviews were, God, I was so nervous all week. I felt awful. I was talking to Andy about it. I felt rotten. I felt terrible. I was so nervous. There was no sense of like, if I tell the coach I'm panic stations here, I might not play at the weekend.
Yeah.
That struck me as wow. That's progressive.
Yeah. And listen, I think it's a very good thing, and I wish I had it as a player. And I think it was probably the next progression in coaching. Anyway, I think Andy does it particularly well, maybe because he was probably part of that era where, it was quite macho, same as it was for us.
Well, he would have been told to man up, and what are you talking about?
Yeah. And there's a bit of that needed from time to time as well. Sure. But I'd say most of the time for our guys, it's just, they work incredibly hard. They're very smart rugby players. They're really well coached in their provinces. We've a very good team. Trying to help them stay out of their own way is a big part of the job. Okay. And I think he coaches that really well, and I don't know, a lot of coaches can coach scrums and lineouts and mauls and rucks, and you can go and learn it pretty easily, I would say, and teach it. Trying to take pressure off players while also trying to perform at a high level. There's a real skill set in that, and I think he's good at that.
Your fear of God speech, which makes you, no. So you'll say, well, look, those days are gone. Should they be totally gone either? Like, that's amazing in many respects. You went out and played so well. Andy Farrell always talks about that match. I know in part because he played in it, sure, but he holds that up as like, well, that's an ultimate level of primed physicality performance. I don't know if that should be gone totally either.
I don't think it's totally gone. Right. I think that, and it was less, maybe not as much, Eddie O'Sullivan would be very insulted, but I think just that used to be such a big part of it. Yeah. That, the emotion, we'd say now the emotion is the icing on the cake, whereas I think back then it was a lot of the cake, it's not the whole cake.
Okay.
But
say New Zealand in a quarter final, is there icing on the cake that day? Is a dressing room as pumped physically and talking in the same way?
Yeah, if the characters that are a bit like that are there,
are they still there?
There's always a few of them, yeah.
Who drives it who drives it these days in that dressing room? Who would set that tone if it was that kind of a day?
Pete would be a little bit like that,
Yeah. He's in the wrong generation, isn't he? He wishes he was back with Anthony Foley. That's where he wants to be.
But no, it's still, there's plenty of them. It's just less of it. It's just less of it, and wanting it, whoever says, the team that wanted it more won, has anyone ever wanted it more and lost? It's not about that anymore. For our players anyway, they prepare really well. So it's trying to get that preparation out onto the pitch. I think very often we might have prepared well and lost some of the preparation in the emotion before the game, and I think our boys have gotten very good at bringing not just the work they've done in the week previous or the weeks previous, the kind of body of work they've done over their careers. They're good at getting all of that out onto the field.
Okay, so if somebody went into fear of God mode now, would some of them be looking at each other going, Jesus, what's your man doing?
Yeah. I would say so, yeah. I would say, listen, there's like, Johnny be the coolest customer on the pitch back in the day, but he was quite old school in the dressing room before the game. And I think sometimes for younger players, it's nice to see how much it means to guys or how important it is or how emotional they can get playing for their country or playing for their province or whatever it is. It's nice to see it sometimes.
If someone's walking, if someone isn't filling the gap, you get on his case, you say it to him. If I fucking walk and I want to hear it, listen to me now, listen to me. I want them standing back thinking what the fuck is going on here. Not for the first 5 minutes, every fucking minute of the game. Fucking manic aggression. Did you scare anyone? Did you fucking put the fear of God into anyone? All right, on your feet.
So you're watching a ton of rugby, and obviously you're at the coalface as well. You said the game changes a whole bunch Are there trends in the game last year, 2-3 years that you think are really interesting?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Super Rugby this year, Auckland won playing, very different rugby to any New Zealand team. They were almost playing like a French team would play, a French top 14 team would play.
What, big pack?
Yeah, big pack and very tight to the ruck and unstructured, and it looked like there was no logic to it at times, but I would say there's an awful lot of logic to it. Same as maybe Toulouse or Bordeaux can look at times, and I presume that's from Vern Cotter coming from France. A Kiwi living in France, going, this is actually a great way for Kiwis to play. So some of the tries they scored during the Super Rugby competition, you couldn't copy them. You couldn't say we're going to copy this style of play because it just looks so unstructured. Right. So I would say a lot of teams are going to be moving towards that style of play now in the future.
At test level as well?
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, France do a bit of it. They play really structured rugby in their own half. They, they're almost like South Africa in their own half. But when they get into the opposition half and it's any bit quick at all, they're just playing whatever the hell they want to do, and it's hard to defend.
I bet it is. Where are Ireland on that whole spectrum at the moment?
I would say we're a bit of both, but sometimes we can be very structured, and it's not that our guys are good at doing that, so and I would say, like every team, we want to be a bit more unpredictable, maybe.
Because listening to a couple of the players, the sense is some of the messaging from the coaches is we'll set up the play to a certain point and then you just have to take the right option, and it's taking the right option, and that's the secret sauce. Is that how you see it?
Yeah. I think just trying to be able to see the space and get it to the space quickly, and having a way of that the team is set up that you can get it there quickly. If you don't know where everyone's going to be when you see the space, well, then you're going to need a 2-minute conversation before you can get it there. Whereas if you have a pretty good idea where everyone is going to be, you can get it there quick enough.
It's funny. Johnny Sexton recently said that I'm 99% sure it's Joe Schmidt who just planted this line in his head. And he said, people that, talk about Sexton's IQ and I'm sure it's off the charts. But he says, Schmidt just said to him, just attack the space. Wherever the space is, just go after that. And he's there at 38 going, God, in some respects, when you don't have much time to think, it's that simple for me. Where's the space? I go after it. And
yeah.
A good chunk of how he's going about his business.
It helps if the rest of the team are looking for the same thing, and are aligned with how to get it there, because, you can take it and you can kick it across there. That's probably the simplest way of doing it. But if you want to pass it there, you need to have people there to pass it to so that they can get it there as well. And so being aligned is really important. Yes. And that's why you need a little bit of structure,
Yeah. And are you enjoying watching rugby? I mean, if you were a fan, would you like what you're seeing out there now? Do you think the game's in a good place in that respect?
Incredible. I thought the rugby at the weekend was amazing. Munster Connacht game was brilliant.
I've seen very high scores in rugby at the moment.
Yeah, very high scores. Super Rugby was incredible. Or not Super Rugby, the Tri Nations was incredible. Super Rugby was actually really interesting to watch. The French rugby is brilliant to watch.
Will we go back to routine scorelines ever again of 12-9 and 15-12? Are those days kind of gone?
I don't know.
I know the odd test match obviously is that way.
I think things happen, the defence gets on top for a while, and then the attack figures it out and gets on top for a while. But I don't know. I can't see it. I think teams are getting better and better at finding space now on the pitch. So who knows?
What's your role next year when Andy Farrell goes? Head coach. No, I'm joking.
No. I would say it's the same role, assistant coach and supporting Simon. But, even we did the emerging tour, almost a trial run of it 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
we have it again. It's still a bit different because you can't do it the exact same way Andy would do it. So I'm sure it'll be a bit different, but we've a pretty good idea of what works for us and why it works for us.
Okay.
And I'm sure it'll evolve a little bit from what we do, but not massively.
Yeah. He won't be smuggled in clothes baskets, Jose Mourinho style, somewhere in 25 if things aren't going well, will he?
I doubt it. No, it'll be good. It'll be good for us as coaches. It'll be good for the players as well, because it will be different. And when he comes back, then it'll be more different again, because he'll have garnered a whole host of experiences with the Lions. So I think in terms of stimulating everyone, it'll be a great experience as we head to the next.
Yeah, are you itching to go on the lines with him as part of the coaching staff?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm
no comment.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd be. I think there's certain coaches will go on that and they'd be really confident doing it. They're probably maybe doing it a little bit longer than I would be. I think it would be a tough. I think it'd be a tough tour.
Sure.
You've 2 games a week. You've different countries coming together. Like the Lions coaching is, and Warren Gatlin and Sean Edwards, they did such a great job of it with Ian McGeechan in 2009. They simplified the game so much that 2-3 training sessions in, we knew exactly what we stood for. But you need to be coaching a long time to be able to simplify things. There's a real skill set in simplifying the game, and I thought they did a great job on it. So I don't know if I'd be there yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, even I don't know if I'd be there yet. Not sure I have the confidence for that.
Listen, it's
is this false
It's not
humility?
easy. The Lions coaching is not easy because the players are in their clubs. They've a way they believe in. They're in their countries. They've a way they believe in. They meet you for 2 or 3 weeks and they mightn't get selected in some of them, and they start chirping, and it's a real. You really have to know what you stand for and how you're going to go about it. Like Graham Rowntree came in 2009. It was brilliant because in 2005, we came up with the calls. We tried to please everyone. In 2009, Graham Rowntree just came in. We're using the England calls. This is what they are. And I was like, well, I think this is actually a simpler system here. And he was like, no, this is what we're using. And it was brilliant because he knew it inside out. He knew he had 4 or 5 guys in there. Well, he had a lot of English players in there, but he knew he had 4 or 5 guys in there who were great guys who would actually explain it really well to everyone else.
Yes, okay.
So we'd all actually be very comfortable with it very quickly. So, there's a real strength of mind and a real experience and maybe age to do that.
You have actually been on those tours, seen how it was done well in 09.
Yeah.
In a way.
I don't know, I just see myself as a lot younger than Graham Rowntree was in 2009, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. So one last one on just the game more broadly. I guess there are concerns as well, bigger picture, and there are any number of issues facing any sport. With rugby, people would point to financial viability, to getting the calendar right, things like concussion. People obviously want a clean sport. There are all of these challenges. You'd be a big voice in the sport, very respected. What concerns do you have over the game, or what kind of health do you feel it's in those more broad terms? I appreciate that's a big question.
But space would be my biggest concern in the game. How do we create more space?
Okay.
And that's the challenge, because when we played, even 20 years ago or 30 years ago, there was 8 people or 9 people in the ruck. There was so much space on the field, whereas there's less and less space on the field now. That leads to 2-man tackles, and that's where the collisions come in, and that's where the injuries come in. And I think, how can we have more one-on-one tackles in the game? And that's when you have to tackle low, and that's when you have more offloads. And
Interesting. See, that's, again, what you've done there is what a Lions coach does. You've taken a whole bunch of problems and you've gone back to root cause. And, you know, because these are hard things to solve. People would talk about concussion and the physicality of the game, say, where do you even start? Most people wouldn't start with space. They're very focused on the tackle, but space might be a more interesting place to start, you know? You last played a rugby match in 2015. So that's coming up on 10 years. I don't know if it feels like 10 years or not. I listened back this week to an interview you gave in 2020. You were talking to Marie Crowe and Donncha Callaghan. COVID quickly, you know, put all that to bed. Everything you were talking about, it was right on the eve of it. But you said a very interesting thing about missing sport. You said first couple of years, actually, I felt, geez, I'm out the gap here. I'm okay. I'm not missing it terribly. But the last year, 18 months, God, I do miss it. I really miss it. So that was 2020. Where are you now, that retired sportsman?
Yeah, well, I love what I do, but I do miss playing. Like, I mean, even I was watching the build up to Bath Northampton the other night. They played, I think it was Friday night, they played the first game of but they were doing a good build up. You know, they were talking to the Northampton guys about, you know, having won it and what it felt, and they were chatting to supporters, and it was real good build up, you know. And but there was, I think it was Walder or one of the guys that was retired, and he was saying that he misses waking up in the morning after a game and being sore, and it just hit me, you know. I would have the same thing, you know. I would have, you know, that was great waking up the morning after a game and you'd won and you're sore, but you feel great that you feel great that your body is sore because of what you did to win or whatever. So, I miss it. I just really, I struggled to enjoy it, but I did love it. Like I loved the training. I loved the matches. I loved the meetings. I loved the arguments. I loved, you know, trying to get better or whatever it was. There was very little of it I didn't love. I loved the guys I played with, the teams I played on. Very little of it I didn't love, and so it's hard not to miss it when that's the case. Like, you know, I was never at the stage where, you know, I've moved club here for the fourth time, and I'm going to hang in here now for 2 more years because I've this job lined up. I was always loving what I was doing, and when that's the case, it's hard not to miss it, you know.
Yeah. And is it strange in that respect, still being so close to it? Aviva Stadium, crowd filling up, the warm up. God, I can smell it. I can touch it. I don't know.
No, I would say being involved with the team in this period has been unbelievably enjoyable. Okay. Like, you know, it's been so successful, and the players are just an incredible. You know, every coach says it, I'm sure, about the players they coach, but they're a great bunch. They, you know, we put pressure on them to do certain things to be better, and they never shirk it. So being involved and being inside it with a great group of people has been really enjoyable. Now, like, do you know, I heard someone else retired saying no, they've no interest because they know they're finished and their body isn't capable. I'm a little bit like that as well. Like, I know my time has come and I had a great time of it. So I know I can't go back playing. I'm not like one of those guys that retired early and thought, geez, I could have done it that didn't happen to me. So I'm not like that at the game when we're warming up. I'm not saying I wish I was back there. I'm not saying that, but I do miss it because I enjoyed it so much, or I loved it so much.
Yeah. Are you content with your playing career? European Cup winner twice, for anyone whose memory needs jogging. For the purpose of this conversation, URC 3 times, Six Nations winner 3 times, Grand Slam in 2009, Triple Crown 4 times, which was much bigger at the time. It's worth stating. Yeah. And then the 3 Lions tours, as we mentioned, one as captain and the winning series in 13. Now that the dust has so firmly settled on it all, are you like, happy, content?
No, you can't change it. So there's no, it's a like, and I've probably answered this question differently before, but you can't change it. So what's the point of not being happy with it? Or, you know, so
you've chosen to be content with it.
Yeah. There's no, you can't.
Sorry, this wasn't a leading question, but I'm not suggesting you should not be content with that. By the way,
no, but I know what you're saying. Like, you know, you could say, I wish I'd done A, B, or C, and like, there's loads of players in the world that would be very disappointed with that career. Like, you know, if you're a New Zealander, you'd be a total failure. Like, so, but it is.
Yeah.
There's no.
But part of that career though is also like, this is why even the World Cup quarter-final defeat and like, they're a failure, is kind of unfair. What those stats don't really capture is even what we're talking about with your parents coming through. This was the start of the Heineken Cup. This was Irish rugby from the 90s. This was building something. So yeah, a New Zealander might think, well, that's not up to much. But actually, there's a hell of a kind of journey in there as well. It's more complicated than just what you won.
Yeah, and there was a lovely article before the Olympics Paul O'Donovan did in the Sunday Times. I don't know, did you see it? Where he's such a brilliant speaker, but he was saying, being asked, you know, will it be a failure if he doesn't win a gold medal? And the question was just so wrong to him that, like, all he said was that he feels that he's living a life worth living, you know. So he trains really hard. He obviously has to study and all that in between it, and he has his ups and his downs. But even if he didn't win, he felt that he's living a life worth living. Like, he's enjoying his life. Like, so that's what I would have felt now when I look back at my career. Whatever I won or lost, I always felt I wouldn't rather be doing anything else. You know, I never felt I was making a sacrifice. I probably missed a few weddings and a few stag do's. They were the only sacrifice I make. Everything else, I was loving doing it. So I think that was a great article, that Paul O'Donovan thing, because when I read it, I said, sometimes you read something and someone has articulated exactly what you'd love to have said, you know.
And would it apply to the World Cup quarter-final defeat? Is that, or is that?
Sure, that's all part of it, isn't it, unfortunately?
Yeah. No, it sure is.
If you could change one thing, you'd change a load of things, you know. So.
Has the World Cup taken on this outsized importance in the way we're talking about rugby? Because it feels, for me, it started when Eddie Jones started like resting players and messing around during the Six Nations with England, and like every time they lost, it's all about 2 years, nothing else matters. And I thought, you want to be sort of careful as well if that's how you view it.
It'll be a big deal until we win one, and then when we win one, it'll be less of a big deal.
Yeah.
So hopefully it happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, there's only 2-3 years to go. Only 2-3 more years of that question being asked. Yeah. But you don't want to get to a point where Ireland are winning the Six Nations and we're thinking, well, look, what does that mean for the World Cup in 3 years' time? That's not a great, back to Paul O'Donovan's point, that's not a great way for us to view Irish rugby at all times either. But I think
we don't view it that way, to be honest with you. And I don't feel that, I never feel that from anyone in the IRFU, above the senior coaches, or I never feel it within the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Other people may feel it because they've been conditioned to feel it because of those things that you said, but we don't, I certainly don't feel it.
So you got a lot out of the Six Nations this year, for instance.
Yeah. Got a lot out of Six Nations, got a lot out of this summer, got a lot out of New Zealand, winning a test series in New Zealand. It was incredible. Yeah. When we look back at Willie John McBride, and I remember after the Lions tour in 2005, thinking of Willie John McBride winning in 1971, thinking, that is just the most unbelievable achievement of all time. Like, I would have had it above a World Cup or anything like that, winning a Lions test series. And for our boys to go down and do it 2 years ago was just incredible.
The win in South Africa was also really extraordinary. That game took on just this heightened sense of, it's not for a World Cup, it's just for who's going to win today, but felt massive because of it. And then to win in the way that Ireland did, I mean...
Yeah, so one of the brilliant things about rugby is a test match, you know, and some people might laugh at it, but maybe you need to be a rugby person to understand how big a one-off rugby match is.
And I think that's great. I would have hated if he'd taken a weakened team to South Africa, or if it's like, well, it's not the World Cup. Rugby doesn't want to lose these, you know, really intense occasions.
And the players want to create history, you know, and you know, that was a. They'd already won a test match in South Africa, but we hadn't won a test series in South Africa. It was a chance to create history. We didn't manage to do it, but we still did something pretty special and pretty important.
Yeah. So when that drop goal goes over, you still get a hell of a rush, and that's
we were bonkers, and it's never happened to me. I've always seen coaches in the box, you know, that go mad. It's never happened to us. You know, we've all been. Whatever way it's happened, we've all been delighted but pretty calm at the end of games, and that's I've never had that as a coach. I nearly fainted. We were celebrating so much, so I actually had to sit down. So it was a brilliant experience.
It's back. It's going to be the attempt at the drop from Farrell. It's for glory. He's done it. What an end to a test match. What an end to a season. That is one of the greatest moments in Irish rugby history.
Why do you think that one in particular got you?
South Africa are double World Cup winners. We obviously have a healthy enough rivalry with them. You know, Razzie is an interesting character. He obviously coached Munster, and you know, there's plenty said in the build up to the game, and they're hard to beat down there. They're an excellent side. They're very physical, but they're very smart as well, South Africa, and how they go about playing the game. So for our lads to, I suppose, almost win the game, have the game pretty close to being in the bag in the first half, to have lost it then in the second half, and then to have come back and won it in the last 5 or 10 minutes, it was a brilliant experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Just a last one. This is slightly random, but I've never actually asked you about this before. You spoke to the European Ryder Cup team in 2016.
Yeah.
At Hazeltine on the Tuesday.
Yeah.
Now, they went on to have a record defeat. Their worst since Walton Heat in 81. So, you know. But I'm just picturing Henrik Stenson, Sergio Garcia, Rafa Cabrera-Bello, Martin Keimer and Thomas Peters looking at you and thinking,
yeah,
who is your man? What do you say to them, or when you speak to teams like that? Do you have a go-to core?
No.
message?
That day I didn't speak for long. I was just one of the things that I spoke about was one of Joe's things was about winning the next moment.
Okay.
And you know, I suppose you had to tell a few stories, rugby stories around that to bring it to life, because that's what they're living in that competition, and probably in golf all the time. So that was one of the things I spoke about. And there was a few other bits and pieces, but they were very nice. They were very eager to engage and chat, and I stayed around for the evening. They were that comedian from Bradford, or not the comedian, the magician from Bradford was there. I can't remember his name. Right. Unbelievable magician, and they had a beautiful team room, and it was lovely to see actually, because team room was pretty much like a rugby team room, you know, but they were really excited to bring me in to see it, because they thought that nothing like this had ever been put together before. Yeah. But for them, they don't ever have that. So it was lovely to see actually how much they enjoyed being part of a team and having someone to rely on, and because I'd say it's pretty lonely, and I think that's what they seem to enjoy about the Ryder Cup. But yeah, the speech didn't work anyway.
Do you do much of that stuff? Would you be speaking to teams regularly?
Not really. No, not really. No. I think it's very. I'd like to speak to teams at the start of the year, maybe, and not the night before they play a game, because
what can you say?
Yeah, you're just relying on emotion then, or something, and maybe you can get something to click, but. You know, I think most of our guys on the Friday night before the game now, the work is done. You know, they don't need a speech. Our guys, like, you know.
And what if you speak to a team at the start of the year? Do you have a go-to core thing that you tend to come back to?
Not really. No, No, I'd probably, speak a lot about the things that we speak about with Ireland. That one of the things I would have taken from Joe is that, under pressure we are our habits. So it's a question of what habits are you going to build now between now and the big thing that you're preparing for. And it's a nice way of looking at your training and your preparation, So, that's one of the main things we talk about with the players.
Yeah. Last question then. I didn't really ask you much about the Emerging Ireland Tour because by the time people hear this, they'll have seen you in the media talking about it and you'll have probably answered all the questions that need to be answered. In broad terms, the importance of this or what you're looking to get out of it, will you be watching what guys are like over in the corner playing cards and personalities and all of that kind of stuff as every bit as much as rugby, or what's your outlook on it as you head?
We're just hoping to get players familiar with how we do things. It's probably it's not too dissimilar to what they do in their provinces, but sometimes if you hear something differently from someone, if you hear the same thing differently from someone else, it can kind of connect with you and kick on a bit. And for a lot of them, some of them have been in 20s environments pretty recently. Some of them haven't been in an Irish environment in a little while. So it's nice for them to, I suppose, get out of their province and get on something different for 2 weeks and actually go and chat to the Irish coach and for, them to maybe say, we think you can do it. If you do ABC, we see you as being up here. So, we got great value out of it as coaches. The last time we were able to trial some things, we were able to, I suppose, work with a little less pressure in terms of results. And some players came out of it really well. So there's a lot of things can come of it. It's not just about trying to get players through. It's a great opportunity for us to coach. It's a big gap between the summer tour and the autumn internationals, generally speaking. The gap between the autumn internationals and Six Nations isn't too bad, and Six Nations and the summer tour isn't too bad, but it's a big gap. So it gets us back up and running with our coaching. It allows us try some things, and obviously gets us connecting with the kind of the next level of players underneath the senior squad and the next level of players that have a chance of coming through. And sometimes just players need to hear, it's as simple as this. Do A, B, and C, and you'll be up here. So
will you still be coaching in 10 years? Do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think about that a lot and figure out what the next step might be. But I don't know. We'll see.
You don't make 5-10 year plans, that kind of stuff?
No, certainly not at the moment anyway.
Okay. Well, it's great to see you're enjoying it, and thank you so much for sitting down and doing this. I know you've been great with your time and you've moved a few things around to do it for us, so we appreciate it. And Paul O'Connor, all the best. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Joe.